This podcast is not meant to be professional advice of any kind. It is meant to be informative and entertaining. If you make any changes to your life, see the appropriate professional before you do so. Welcome to SuperAge. My name's David Stewart. I am the founder of Ageist and your host on the SuperAge show. We talk about how to live healthier, how to live longer, and how to be happier. And who doesn't want that? Today's show is brought to you by Inside Tracker, the dashboard to your inner health. Go to insidetracker.com/ageist, save 20% on all their products. The show is also brought to you by Element, LMNT. My favorite electrolyte mix. It's what I put in my water in the morning, and it's what I put in my water at the gym. Go to drinkelement.com/ageist and receive a free 8-serving sample pack with any purchase. Today's show is also brought to you by SRW. Aging is inevitable, but how we age is chiefly a matter of our choices. If you go to srw.co, you can save 20% on all their products by using the code AGEIST20 at checkout. Welcome to the SuperAge podcast. It is great to have you with us. This is episode 135, and we'll be dropping this on May the 24th, 2023. We are back in the mountains of Utah, where it is absolutely beautiful. Sunny days, green grass, snow in the mountains. It's, a vision of Heidi. What can I say? Last week, we were in a very different place. We were staying in downtown Brooklyn and doing appointments in New York. New York, by that I mean Manhattan. And it was wonderful. I lived in that city for about 25 years, and I've seen it change a lot over the years. It's sort of the street grid seems the same. The buildings, there are more of them. The subway, which I happen to think is just an incredible thing. These were all wonderful. And what I really noticed was the city's got its mojo back. There was just so much energy in the street, and people were optimistic. There was a part of town that I had never been to before, or maybe once very fleetingly, because it used to be really dicey, and it's called Dime Square with a D, not to be confused with Times Square with a T. And it's so Dime Square is sort of like the far eastern part of what used to be Chinatown. You take Canal Street almost over to the river, and they blocked off some of the streets there. And I don't know how to describe it exactly. It was like a street party. It was like a block party, except it's like that pretty much every night. We went there to have dinner, and they blocked off some of the streets there. There's some like lovely new hotels, old buildings they've rehabbed, and tons of restaurants and bars. And outside of them, there's all this sort of outdoor dining that was created during COVID, which wasn't there before, which caused this like incredibly vibrant street culture. And I just love that. It was, so nice to see young-ish people behaving the way young-ish people do. It was just great. I mean, there was, 500, 1,000 people. It was like, I couldn't believe it. I thought, is this a special event? Like, is this, but no, it was always like that. So, New York, there's a lot of, you read a lot of stuff in the news against all these big cities. There's like terrible things going on, but that's what the news does, is they try and scare you. And I personally think New York is an incredible place. We had some great meetings. I actually met with Matt Youssef-Sada, one of the world's foremost Senolytic researchers, who we had on the program here a few weeks back. And Matt and I had soupy dumplings in Chinatown, which was pretty fun. And Matt gave me all the sort of inside scoop on what's going on with researchers in the field of longevity and specifically Senolytics, which was super interesting. And I think one of the things that I just want to mention is the Surgeon General, who seems like a pretty amazing guy, very, very impressive individual. And he came out with a report a few weeks ago. Really, his sort of mission as Surgeon General, I think his mission in life is about loneliness. And I think today he came out with a thing about how harmful social media is for young people. And I could make a case that social media is not so great for any people, but whatever, we're stuck with it. But back to loneliness, and I actually think the loneliness and the social media are very much connected. The thing that struck me when I was in New York, and I'm not saying that, a lot of people out in places, being festive are not lonely. They may be, I don't know. But I didn't feel that way. And I think that this thing of loneliness is just, it causes so many problems. There's so much dysfunction is caused when people feel lonely. And I think when people feel lonely, there's a lack of self-worth. People don't tend not to take as good care of themselves. And in fact, I believe in the Surgeon General's report, loneliness, I'm not quite sure how they measure it, but whatever their metric is on loneliness, is about as bad for your health as smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. And as I'm thinking about this, how it takes like 2 to tango. So it's like, what I mean by that is we all have a certain responsibility with this. I don't feel particularly lonely today. I have a sort of job here where it keeps me engaged with people all the time. But there are other people that perhaps I come in contact with, that perhaps each one of us come in contact with, that are lonely. And I think that this really... So what's the solution? I mean, there are programs out there and we can, have arrange for people to meet and get together. But my sense is that when people are lonely, it becomes very difficult for them to reach out and, connect with other people because they're having trouble doing it. And maybe they lose confidence around other people, or they get angry, or hard to say. But I think that we can all make an effort in this direction. And what I mean by that is, if everybody who's listening to this podcast today, if you're out there, you're at the market buying groceries, you're at the post office, wherever you go, you just make it a point to say hi to people. Hi, how you doing? Good to see you today. Was it busy today? How do you like the weather? What's going on? Love your shoes. Whatever it takes. This has a ripple through effect. You may be alleviating to some small degree someone's sense of loneliness, and they may feel slightly more confident and reach out to other people. And I think that we spend far too much time in our own cocoons, scared about reaching out to other people, scared about what they might think of us or how they might react. They ain't going to hurt us. I've never had anybody, get aggressive with me when I say like, hey, how you doing? You having a good day? What's going on? So that's my thought for the day. I think that everyone who's listening to this podcast, if we can just make a small effort to reach out to the people who are out there who maybe we don't know, and we can touch their lives in a positive way, that'd be a good thing. Today's show is brought to you by SRW Laboratories. Out of New Zealand, their vision is to extend human health span. SRW Labs curates the very latest in science and research to formulate premium nutraceuticals that support your cellular health, especially as you age. Working with their scientific advisory board, they seek to understand and address the causes of aging at a cellular level, providing support across 12 bodily systems with an approach that is unique to SRW. They know that doing one thing well, such as eating healthily, won't have the desired effect on your health. This is why SRW seeks to educate people on the factors that influence aging and, more importantly, biological age. Use the code AGEIST20 at checkout and save 20% off any order. Go to srw.co, not .com. Use the code AGEIST20 at checkout, save 20% on all their products. Today's show is also brought to you by Inside Tracker, created by the experts from Harvard, Tufts, and MIT. Inside Tracker uses the power of your body's biometric data to reveal to you what you need to live longer, healthier, and happier. I've been using Inside Tracker for a few years now, and it is the dashboard to my inner health. It's a critical part of my health and wellness routine. And since May is Women's Health Month, Inside Tracker is unveiling an upgraded ultimate plan that includes 3 new hormone markers that are critical to measure during a woman's reproductive and menopausal years. For a limited time, our listeners can get up to 20% off Inside Tracker's new Ultimate line, complete with estradiol, progesterone, and TSH. With Inside Tracker, discovering what your body needs is no longer a guessing game. Visit insidetracker.com/ageist, save 20%, and we'll leave that link in the show notes. Today on the podcast, we have a real treat. This is someone that I've wanted to have on for a while, and I'm so glad that he agreed to come on. We have Clayton Crawley on, and Clayton Crawley is ordained in the Episcopal Church. And I really wanted to talk to someone with a religious point of view, how they felt about some of the things we talk about here. How do they feel about increasing lifespan, health span? So much what we talk about here, we talk about it from, almost like a bioengineering point of view. And I wanted to hear, what's the spiritual take on this? What's the religious take on this? It's a wonderful conversation, and I'm really glad that you're going to be part of this. If anybody has questions, comments, if it stirs up stuff for people, please reach out to us. We want to hear from you. I'll leave this at the end of the show, but I'll give it to you right now. David@superage.com. I answer all my email promptly and personally. So if you want to hit me up, that's how you do it. And just after my conversation with Clayton, we're going to do Just Try This, which is that little sort of fortune cookie that we do every week, which may help you have a healthier, happier, more joyful week. So that comes up just after my conversation with Clayton. But let's give Clayton a call right now. So we're here today with Clayton Crawley, who is an Episcopal priest, and the Episcopal Church is part of the Worldwide Anglican Communion.
Hi, David.
How are you today?
Very good. Very good. Glad to be here.
I'm so happy we got that intro done. That was like the hardest thing I'm going to do all day, is that this lingo is so not part of my world. But I'm really happy to have you here, because we talk a lot about living longer, living healthier, and, like a lot of sort of like science stuff or occasionally financial stuff. But I think that sort of your world is very much part of this Venn diagram of living longer, living better. And I'm really, really pleased to have you here to speak about these things today. So, one of the first things I want to talk about is, some people who are perhaps not in your world think of, the church and religion is very sort of guilt oriented. And I please talk to me about like guilt and joy. How do those
Absolutely. Yeah. So, setting a frame for the Episcopal Church. And so we are a product of the Reformation. So the Reformation was about taking religion and spirituality from an institutional church down to an individual level. The Episcopal Church chose to kind of do a middle path. So we have all of the institution stuff, and we also believe in that personal relationship with God. So that that living better and joy, I believe it becomes a part of the warp and weft of who we are as Anglicans. And that middle way is we talk about scripture, reason, and tradition. Those are the three kind of legs of the stool that we all need in order to understand what it is about our lives that is consonant with how God wants us to live. So if you take out scripture, the good thing about a three-legged stool is you pull one of the legs, you fall over. Less joyful than being able to just sit there. And so we believe that we need to have the scriptures, and we can learn things from those. We have reason. We're given our brains by God for a reason to understand to comprehend the world around us, to comprehend our relationships with each other. And I would argue that part of that comprehension is we're built to be joyful. We're built to thrive. We're built to enjoy And so you have scripture, you have reason, and then you have tradition. So that's where you get tangled up in all of the, worldwide Anglican communion stuff. So we have a sense of history that is that I believe is part of that arc towards justice. And so that's why we keep the traditions. When we get it wrong, we can look back and say, well, that wasn't the right thing. Let's move a little, let's keep the trajectory going in a positive way. And so that's, I think, how tradition informs the Anglicans. It's not something, oh, we've always done it that way. It's, we did it that way and we could probably make it better.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that. I mean, I guess mostly here we deal with the leg of the stool that is reason.
Reason, yes.
So we're sort of big on that. But
Yep.
I want to hear what I wanted. There's so much that I want to learn from you, Clayton. So you were just in Milan at
Yes.
a big international furniture fair, and so that world is very much about beauty. And
yes.
How does this fit into your view of the world?
Well, and that the seminal conversation was one about we're here in a rarefied environment. And first of all, we're in Milan, which is a great city. And then we are looking at design, a global design event that is about how you live well. How do you appreciate the built environment? And the built environment not being a static thing, being a very alive thing. So I think where that conversation was headed was, well, how is it that we can enjoy this with the with all the suffering and all the pain that is in the world? Does that mean that we shouldn't do this? That we shouldn't participate in things that bring us joy, in things that are beautiful? Because we should all, there should be an egalitarian nature to design. And that conversation, moral theology, started a long dinner conversation about, well, does God want us to be happy? And so I'll use God language because I'm a Christian. Does God want us to be happy? Or should God want us to suffer because other people are suffering? And the nature of joy, the nature of being happy came into the conversation. And so this is the challenge was, do we then, I think the problem is that choice was put before a priest sitting at the dinner table of, should we suffer or should we be happy? What does God want us to do? Because people are suffering and we're here in Milan. Well, being a good Anglican, I always flip the question around and, what do you think we should be doing? And actually this person, is very much in the design industry. So this is beauty. This is what we're called to do. And I said, well, I believe that you're really asking a question of, what does God want us to do with our lives? And my answer to that is to be joyful, to use your word, is that highest calling. And the part of being a joyful person is to understand that being selfish is actually a path to misery. So I think that you can enjoy the best things in life, but it's when you take that enjoyment and hold it tightly, you are committing what I think in Christianity we would call a sin. You're being selfish. It is not, we are not called to be miserable by God. We're called to enjoy this creation. And there's more abundance than we know what to do with. And so people would go, oh, well, you can't enjoy anything because there's suffering in the world. I think the suffering in the world is not the created norm. The created norm is to understand, to be fulfilled, to have a sense of purpose, to enjoy life. I think that's what God creates us to do. And in the work that you do is like, how are you? How do you have that? You have that understanding, leaning on that reason. How do we make our lives better and longer? But I would posit I'm less about the longevity than the quality. And it is, and I think that religion often says, oh, you gotta suffer in order to be close to God. And I just look around I'm looking across the Hudson Valley now. I don't, that doesn't call out to me to suffer. That view of the Catskills, that calls out to me to be thankful that I'm here and can participate in this created order.
Remember that? I think it was Bobby McFerrin had a song called "Don't Worry, Be Happy."
Don't we be happy?
Is
Yes.
that is that what we're talking about here?
Well, so here's what I would say. I would say be happy is definitely right consonant. And I think the don't worry, and we talked about this a little earlier in our previous conversation. So don't worry could be seen as abdicating responsibility for being a human creature. So I don't know if it's don't worry. I think it is. I believe it would be more like have purpose, be happy. And so what that means is that you're connected to other people. And in Christianity, one of the ways that we're connected to other people is through a thing called prayer. So I may actually, pray for someone. My discipline is pray for a year when someone says something has happened well, or something is, they need some help, they're sick or something. And so for a year, I will keep that person in my daily prayers. I may not talk to them once.
How does that
for that year.
So let's back that up. How does that connection happen? I'm I don't understand how prayer works.
Okay. So here's how prayer works.
Okay.
David, I am about to retire, and I'm thinking about that. And you've got a mindset that is like, okay, well, I've kind of done this before, and I hope that Clayton's retirement goes well. And I want to keep that connection and keep that concern front of mind. So out of that comes what we would call a prayer practice. So I keep a list. Other people just are smart enough to keep it in their brain all the time, but I keep a list. And then on the list would be Clayton is retiring. And then in your morning sit, you would go through the list and say, hey, Clayton's about to retire. Hope that goes well for him. It went well for me. I hope it goes well for him. The
okay.
end. That's your prayer practice, David. So what you would call it is intention.
Well, okay. But we gotta go a little further with this.
Yeah.
So does prayer energetically, like you're saying, the person's not in the room, so you're not really connected to them. Is there some sort of energetic connection that's happening here?
Well, I think I believe as a Christian that the energetic connection. I mean, and when we learn more about the way that the universe is stitched together, that kind of we're all bound to each other, even if we're not in the same physical environment. I think that what prayer is a really early manifestation of realizing that we are entangled. Now we would say quantum entanglement, but we are all in relationship to each other, even if we're not looking at each other across a Zoom call or sitting in the same room. But that intention, call it prayer, that intention, that prayer allows us to not abdicate our responsibility each for the other, but allows us to have that clear, clear care for each other, and allows us to be more joyful. It is, in a way, I have a discipline of sitting for 20 minutes and then doing my daily prayers. That's my thing. I get as much out of the sitting as I do for the prayer, as much out of the prayer as I do for the sitting, because the sitting is me being centered, getting ready. The prayer is me realizing that the center is only fed because I interact with others. I care for others. I have others on, with intention in my life. I think there's that be happy piece. I actually don't believe that someone could cut off all interactions with other human beings, and what does happiness look like with no interaction with another person? The created order isn't about pull one really cool thing out and it lives by itself. Stasis isn't the way that the creation is built.
So I think this sort of goes to something we've had people on the show talk about. You have molecules that make up cells, and cells that make up organs, and organs that make up organ systems, and organ systems that make up organisms, and then organisms interact with each other, and then you have this whole thing. And to remove, just as you don't have a cell cannot function on its own, either can an organ or any of this. If you pull something out, so this sort of leads me to this idea of usefulness and purpose.
Yep.
So, oftentimes you mentioned retirement, and I tell people, like, be useful, help other people, have people count on you. So when you get up in the morning, there are people counting on you to do something or other. And you've been alive long enough that that you're good at something or other, and do that. So, to help other people. So talk to me a little bit about, in your world, this idea of purpose. What is purpose?
So I work for my church's pension fund, which provides, and so purpose and retirement, very, very top of mind for my day-to-day work. I worked at a parish before coming here, but I've been at the pension fund for 24 years. So we are all about purpose. It is, it's one of our core values of what is it to have purpose, both for us as a company, for us as individuals, and for our clergy and retirees. So I think that again, I this is another thing that happens with clergy. They're going to circle back around to whatever they said before. I think that the purpose is really that understanding of interrelationship. I believe that my daily prayers is one of those ways that I share purpose and have that interrelationship with other people. In retirement, what does that look like? Most clergy will continue to help the church, even if they're not paid for it. And that's a blessing and a curse. You never get rid of us. But I think that what people will say is, they'll say, "Oh, I'm not a religious person," which is the not organized religion, but I'm very spiritual. And when you start pulling that, what does that mean? What does the spiritual mean to you? You often get down to that, I need to be in relationship with others. And now I think this is very, very core. And it is, in fact, not all about me.
Oh, thank God that you said that. This is one of my big sort of issues with, we deal a lot with wellness and how to optimize the human. And, I tell people, this is not about you.
Right.
Yeah, you need to optimize so you can help others.
Yes.
But it's not
Absolutely.
just about this, like, how can I on my own do this thing? That's just going to get you into a closet. And it's a very dark place. You don't want to go there. It's about helping others. And now, one of my other sort of things that I really like to rant about, and I feel like ranting this morning, is
Excellent.
is the difference between passion and purpose.
Yep.
And this makes me, I see this, more people go down this rabbit hole, and there is a whole cottage industry out there of, like, oh, well, we're going to help you find your passion. There are books and there are courses, and you can go to retreats and blah, 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 blah. And I just say, this is a bunch of, like, navel gazing hooey. Stop it. Because passion is about you. And passion is really, and it's very changeable. How do you feel about something day to day? Oh, I'm going to look at my belly button and sort of figure that out. No. It's about purpose. Purpose leads to passion. Passion does not lead to purpose. If you get up in the morning and you are useful and you are connected to other people, boom, you got passion. But if you try and do it the other way, that just doesn't work. And it's a waste of time. And if there's one thing we don't have a lot of, it is time.
Agreed.
So
anyway. So I'm guessing this magnet is not on your refrigerator. This is one of those phrases that drives me crazy. Follow your bliss. It's like,
oh my
really?
God. Oh, that makes me insane. That makes me absolutely insane. Who says that?
It's the most selfish. It's the most
absolutely
selfish thing. But
absurd.
You can turn it just a little bit, and you could say, "Be blissful." Fine,
that's
you want
fine.
to use that, because that presupposes interactivity. That presupposes I know what I'm about, and I'm going to be this, blissful person, spreading this around. And I find that kind of that, and I call it selfish.
Absolutely, 100%.
It's all about me.
Yep.
And it's weird that people believe, and again, because retirement's front of mind, people believe that they get there and then it can all be about me. I was like,
now,
whoa, if that's what you've worked your entire life to be, it's like, that is, you got on an off-ramp that is not going to anywhere that's helpful. I also think those are the people that wind up very, very miserable, because an enclosed system is super static, and it really doesn't lead anywhere. No. The navel gazing happens. So let me do one of these Christian things that you might have heard. You've seen the bumper sticker. What would Jesus do? Right? You've seen that on someone's bumper sticker before. Mm-hmm. Here's the problem with that. And in Christianity, it's a backwards looking statement that says everything that we need to do has been fixed in the past, and it loops back around to a past that is somehow it's an icon of what we should do. How about this? What is Jesus doing? Now, again, it is a forward-looking statement, and it doesn't get you into this trap. And I think this is religious selfishness. It's that same nasal gazing that you're talking about. We know the perfection. It's stopped, and all we got to do is go back to that, and then we can just make it all perfect. And that's a closed system. That's death, quite frankly. And so when I tell people I'm a Christian, I think what gets into their mind is, oh, you're wrapped up in this system that is actually profoundly selfish and is self-referential. There's that. Remember the leg of stool that's reason? That reason allows us to grow. It allows us to to move forward. It allows us to kind of lean into what it is that we're called to be as created beings. And that's enjoying abundance, living into that. So I think I think that, you started the rant, and I'm right there with you. Selfishness is a real problem for us, especially when we get to a certain age, when we think, okay, well, here I'm punching my ticket, and I do think that there's a risk there to be selfish. In a Christian parlance, we would say that's sinful.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the in the wellness world. This is this sort of like selfishness, self-centeredness makes me crazy. When I hear these, college graduation speeches like, "Oh, you should go out and follow your bliss," that is such BS. No, you should absolutely not. That's insane. You want to go like make sand candles on the beach in Bali?
Yeah.
No, your job is to figure out what it is that you're really good at and get better at it so you can help more people.
Help more people.
And the same thing happens, like people midlife, and they're getting retirement. They're like, oh, well, like now it's my time. You're just going to end up in a really dark place. The thing is, you've been alive for enough years. You know something that you're good at. Use that in the service of helping other people. You can make money doing it. You can give money away. You do whatever you want to do. But this idea, I mean, some people actually can get a lot of mileage out of like, essentially like, what is my pet? Follow my bliss, this happy thing. Okay. I mean, I see this time and time again, like people, oh, it's okay for like 6 months. I'm going to like, play golf, or I'm going to just like sit around. And then one of two things happens. Either
they hate golf.
They could hate golf, or often what happens is they just die. That happens fairly often. Or they're just like, I can't stand this anymore. I got to like get out there and like do things and connect to people. And as you said, we are connected to others. And so much of our identity is our work. It's that camaraderie, that connection to others. And if you retire, when you retire, you can often lose that. And it's very important to replace that with other senses of usefulness and connection to people. So I'm gonna shut up on my rant.
Well, no, and I'll say, and I think Jesus was right there with you on the rant, David. So we have some words that show up in all three of our four gospels, and it goes like this: What does it profit a person if they save their life? If, in other words, if I get it all just perfectly and they lose it? Because that conservation, that selfishness, that I've got it all figured out now and it's mine.
Right.
That's what Jesus was talking about. It's like you're going to save it, you're going to get it just perfect, but then you're losing it. You've actually lost it. But if you actually give it away, you lose your life. Become a generous person. Generosity is very important. If you give your life away, you will actually save it. Now, again, Jesus talking in those kind of koan that language where you have to sit with the words for a bit. But I think that's that rant. You can be selfish and have all the money and all the health that you need, but you will die because that's not what it's about.
Yeah.
It is about giving to others, being generous, being joyful. The people that are the most joyful are in my experience, are those who have the most connections. We're seeing all of this research now that what keeps your brain healthy and what makes you happy long term is like having relationships with other people. Well, it's like blinding flash of the obvious, but hey, there's research now, so that proves it.
I want to circle to longevity.
Yes.
So I recall, and I probably got this wrong, but there's something like 6 score, which is like 120 years or something.
120 years.
Like 120 years. And so, we're seeing a number of the people that I've talked to are kind of clever about this sort of thing, think that we're entering an age where people are going to be living healthy for longer, and then overall lifespan. The fastest growing age group in the world is people over 100.
Yeah.
And I don't. Maybe somebody's lived to 120. It's a little unclear, but where talk to me about like longevity and your world. How does that intersect?
Sure. Well, so first let me do the Bible thing, and so we've got that scripture leg of the stool here. So when you in that you're talking about Genesis 6:3, 6th chapter, 3rd verse. In Genesis 5 and Genesis 6, you get this kind of litany of who lived how long and all of that. Adam, the first human, according to Genesis, lived 930 years.
Whoa.
Yeah, his great
Wow.
grandson lived
Wow,
365.
the bar is high.
The bar is very
Whoa.
high. But now here's what's interesting. If you look at Adam, 930, great grandson Enoch, 365, Methuselah, so as old as Methuselah lived 187 years. And then in Genesis 6:3, we hear, oh, well, this is the lifespan of a human, 120 years. This is how long they should live. Now, let's hold in mind that in the Psalms later on in the Bible, Psalms 90:10 says someone will live for 70 years, and if they're really good at it, they'll live for 80. So longevity is a little, there's lots going on there with what's the right number, and keep in mind Jesus was between 30 and 33 when he was killed. So one would kind of hope that you would, somewhere in all that mix, be able to land somewhere. So here's the thing that I'm going to talk to you, just give you one little note about scripture. Don't proof text it. Because you got to use reason when you're reading scripture. And so, like I said, you could have just as easily landed on Adam for 930 years as a normal lifespan. So here's what I think about longevity. It goes back to something we already talked about. I believe, and that we are called to live well as long as we live. And if you look at this, the kind of, we have this tradition of going out into the wilderness or into the desert to fast and to pray. Those sages lived very long lives. And if you look at intermittent fasting and all the things that we're learning about now, it was kind of their lifestyle. They did not go out there to live long. They went out there to find what is their purpose. And I think that was their reason for going and living an ascetic life, a life of denial. If you base that with, let's go with Archbishop Desmond Tutu, a person known to many in South Africa, went through apartheid and then was the chief bishop in South Africa for many years, lived a very long life. And what people remark on was he was always joyful. If you were ever in a room with him, the thing you remembered was he giggled. No, he did not laugh. He giggled. And to have someone with that kind of history and that all of this authority, and when you would be in the room with him, it's like, who is that? And it turns out it's Tutu giggling about something. He had this sense of joy, and he had that coming out of out of the apartheid, and was one of the major folks on the Truth and Reconciliation effort in that country. Even with that heartache, he stayed connected to others, and his way of connection was humor and being grounded in his faith. So what does that say about longevity? I really think that we are called to live as well as we can for as long as we live. That might sound like I'm punting on how many years. I think it's actually quality over quantity. And some people are just genetically blessed. They live a really long time and they seem to do everything wrong. How did you live to be 103? Scotch and cigarettes. That worked for some people. I do believe that when we look at how long we should live, we should actually look at quality of that life. Hopefully that makes some
absolutely.
sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's something else that people tend to wrestle with, or have very strong feelings about, I should say. And that's this idea of what is the right level of maintenance. And so you sort of have a spectrum here of, and we're talking, there are different kinds of maintenance. There's plastic surgery. There's sort of a range of things. And I always pick on Donatella Versace. Donatella, I've never met you, but you're just sort of a figurehead for this. Donatella is sort of on one end of that spectrum.
Yep.
And then there's the other end of, like I'm wearing Invisalign because I'm tired of looking at my crooked teeth. And some people would say like, oh, orthodontia, you can't even do that. Like you're messing with God's design. And so you have this sort of like that. And some of the people who are saying like messing with God's design, they're fine with treating cancer or heart disease or things like that, but they're sort of less fine about the aesthetic things that some people do. Help me out here.
Give you the good liberal Christianity point of view. God does really not spend a whole lot of time worrying about whether David's teeth are straight. But you know what? But God does spend time knowing that David's a happy person and is smiling and is comfortable with his smile. God actually likes that kind of stuff. It's the whole Christian thing about what tab A goes into slot B. With the whole sexuality stuff. God doesn't actually care nearly as much as we do about that. It's like, really? That's what God's spending God's time on? I don't think so. But what I do think is it goes again to that God does care that we are healthy. God does care that we are finding joy. God cares about our wholeness as an individual. And if you're going to be focused on the care of your physical body, hey, as Christians, God made that thing. So why wouldn't it be? Do you want to let your house run down, or do you want to repair the roof every now and then? So I think that that desire to be long lived, the desire to be aesthetically pleasing both to self and to others, I think that's good. I think that that's great. I just don't think God spends a whole lot of time on that. I think that religion spends a lot of time on that. And depending on what someone's religious politics are, you can kind of guess what they're going to care about. It's okay to treat cancer, but it's not okay to have a smooth forehead and do Botox every 6 months or something. I don't know how you make those judgment calls, because last I checked, it wasn't in the scripture. So thou shalt not do Botox more than once a year. I missed that verse. So I actually think that if the reason for self-care is so that you can better participate as a whole person in the created order, which is at once integrated. Hey, that sounds like that's consonant with a creator and a created being having a good relationship with each other. So, go for it with the Invisaligns, David. I lived in braces with headgear when I was a kid, so you're taking the better path. There's no good thing for headgear on a bus. That just asked to be beat up, actually.
It took me 64 years to figure out Invisalign, and it's I gotta say, I have no relationship with the Invisalign company, but it's like magic. It's amazing.
Yeah, my husband swears by it. So yeah, I would have definitely preferred to do that. So it was 64 years well spent to get to that place. So hopefully I hopefully I answered that question, because it's a really good question, because I think the question is more about this maintenance piece that can become all encompassing,
Mm-hmm.
and the real nub of that question is, should we care for ourselves? And the answer to that is yes. We're created by God. We're loved by God. Why would you not want to care for something that is as beautifully and wonderfully made as we are? So, ding, yes is the answer. But you always have to hold that in tension with, is it to do good? Is it to be, more at ease so you can be more fruitful? Or is it selfish? If it's selfish, nope, it's just going to lead to death. So I love the fact that I'm picking up your phrase, that it leads to death. That sounds real. That sounds like a priest if ever I heard one. But that is, selfishness will lead to death. And so some people optimize themselves so that they can be better human beings in relation with others. That's great. Some people optimize themselves so that they can become these little islands of, self-absorption. And it's like, wow, there's no good there.
Unhappy place. There's something that came to mind. I just learned about this last week, that we humans have these things called mirror neurons. And the way it works is, sort of Desmond Tutu comes to mind. So we know that if we just smile, smile, it sends this epigenetic signal to our cells that like everything's okay. It reduces the stress, and we feel better. Just the act of like, even if you can't think of anything to smile at, just smile and you're going to feel better. And there's this sort of cascading epigenetic effect that happens. This is very positive. But what also happens is if you smile and someone else sees you smile, we have these mirror neurons. And so me smiling and you see me smiling affects you. And because we're built to sort of imitate and pick on what's happening around us. And so this idea of Desmond Tutu giggling, not only is he having a jolly good time, but all the people around him feel better because of what he's doing. So again, we have this effect on, oftentimes people, they reach a certain age and they say, oh, I'm invisible, nobody notices me. This is just hooey. We absolutely observe everyone around us and it affects us, and we have an effect on all those around us. And so we can we can like change the vibe in the room by smiling or being grouchy or whatever. And I think it goes back to this idea of like not being an island cell out there. Like we are connected, and there's actual sort of like neuroscience about these mirror neurons that those are really there. That really works.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's like that mimetic desire. So if you're walking along someone and someone goes to take something or notices something, the human response is, oh, I want that too. I'm drawn to that because it's that mimicking. And so the same way that mirror neurons, that neurons that smile is it's catching.
Yeah.
And so I think that's I do think people want to be in rooms or in relationship with people who are joyful and who are happy.
Mm.
And likewise, when you sit with someone who is sad and depressed or in crisis, you're actually lightening that load because you're participating with them. You're not. I always think that there's two kinds of people. If there's a disaster happening, there's the people who are going to run the other direction, and then there's the people who are going to run towards it to see what they can do. I think that mimicking that running to care, and that being with you, I think all of that is of a piece. And I think it's just participating in humanity as a great thing. It's really a gift to be in relationship with other people.
It is. I feel like some people are, like, well, how can I be useful today? And at the lowest level, like, when you go to the post office, smile at people.
Yeah.
you just help them out.
Yeah.
Or my favorite is if I'm in an elevator and, people tend not to talk in the elevator and they get sort of, I'll just like pick who's ever there. And I just say, well, I really like your shoes. And it's just like, wow, you do? You noticed me? Like, you like my shoes? And they feel better. And then I feel better because I've made a connection. And it's not that hard.
It's not that hard. We recently, so I lived in New York City for 24 years, and now I have a place 2.5 hours north, and so in South Georgia where I was raised, you're driving along, and of course you have your hand on the steering wheel, and to recognize your neighbor, which probably live 5 down the road. You're driving along, you throw 2 fingers up on the wheel. It's like this. You're not going out of your way. You're not waving your arms or anything. You just throw up 2 fingers. So it's one of those things that's also very catchy, because up here I'm driving around and I'll see the neighbor, and just I've gotten back to those things that I grew up with. And so it is, when you see the person in the store in 3 weeks, you already have that. You've sustained that relationship, and you'll say, oh, well, I saw you the other day. That was a crazy day, wasn't it? And it is that it's not hard, but it's easy to just ignore. And I think that's where we are really, the work is to find, and I'm going to pull your phrase, David, the work is to find that purpose for the day. And that purpose may be go to the post office and, compliment someone's shoes. It may be going down to the library and helping someone learn how to use their computer, which is, on my list of things to be helpful with. So that's, I do think that we are, that we sometimes want grand gestures as the baseline. The baseline for humans is breathing. I mean, that's how we're just geared to do that. And so when that interactivity with another human being, when that joy, when the smile becomes just an autonomic reaction when you're around people, wow. I mean, that shows that you're engaged. You're moving ahead. You've got purpose in life. You're some ways taking responsibility for the fabric of humanity, and as small or as large as that can be. Not everybody's Desmond Tutu, but everyone can throw up a hand as they pass their neighbor on the road.
And I think that, there's purpose big P and purpose small p. And I think that so much that, I was reading that since 1950, the average adult has their circle of close friends is half what it was in 1950. And I would, probably guess that the fear index, there's no more crime now than there was in 1950. It's the same. but because of like cable news and social media and all this other stuff, we're sort of bombarded with like, be scared, be very scared, like the enemy's out there. And you see these, like this nut the other day who shot 5 people in his front yard because they told him to like stop firing his gun. So
Right.
this is just like fear, fear of others. And it's, to me, this is not dissimilar if we go back to the biology paradigm
Mhm.
of like like a cancerous cell, right? That's like it's just not living in harmony with others,
Right.
and this runs amok. And and I think that where that stops is that you just smile at people and say, "Hey." So, like, whoever you do that to, like, they're going to go home and maybe they'll like smile at their kid or smile at their spouse and like, oh, and it works both ways. Like, it's not all. I really, we are sort of wired as humans with a negative bias. Because we pay attention to that because it's a survival thing. Like, oh, the
Mhm.
tiger was there once. Don't go there. The tiger may be there again. We need to pay attention to the tiger. But there are very few tigers out there. Like, that's just
Right.
really isn't the thing. And all of this sort of nonsense that is out there in the world, it just isn't. I've lived in like blue places, very, very blue places, like my whole
Mhm.
life.
Mhm.
And now I live in a very red place. And guess what? They're all the same.
Yeah.
Like, nobody's mean to me here.
Right.
They seem to like me. I smile at them. They smile at me. Everything's cool. And I feel like, I don't, it's just another rant of mine. Like,
Well, I think we want to. I think we want to sort. I think we want to sort people.
yeah.
And I do think that we are called to try to break that negative bias. And that complimenting someone's shoes thing that you do, that's actually breaking that negative bias, because you don't know their voting history or their gun ownership position or anything. It's like you're just
Yeah.
being in relationship with them.
In
And
connection.
I think that is key, and that's part of living well. And
Absolutely.
that's part of being that's part of being who we are as humans.
Mm-hmm.
And it's worth stating, I think it's obvious, but it's worth stating, and because we circled around this with our dinner conversation, Maggie overheard it, is does this mean that we are we don't need to have responsibility for taking care of those who are less fortunate? We're when you are integrated with other people, when you are working and living and aware that you are not the center of the universe, you do have responsibility for those who are less fortunate. You do carry that with you. It does not mean that you go to the bank every morning and take out $100 bills to just pass out on the subway. That's not what that means. But I always think that the first place to start on care for others is not being selfish.
Yeah.
That puts you in this mindset of how to live well. It puts you in the place of, oh, I am here in this abundant created place as a created being that seeks to share that abundance. I mean, that's living well, I think.
Yeah. The title of this podcast is SuperAging, and it's about living well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is super interesting, Clayton. I feel
And
like,
unlike probably any other of your conversations, so I'm so glad to have been a part
well,
of it.
it's it very much overlaps. I think that it's you can talk about different things to like eat and ways to exercise, and these are all like super important. It's about taking care of yourself because,
Mhm.
as you said, that's like, you know, the creator's idea is that you
Yeah,
take care of yourself.
yeah,
But that's not the end point. There's
agreed,
a reason for this.
agreed.
Yeah.
And it is natural to be aware that it's not the end point. It is also it's just this thing that we call life is it doesn't just happen to us. We have ownership, we have
Yeah.
agency, and so that's back to that purpose.
Yeah.
We people who believe that they're, you know, following their bliss. I'm sure that both you and I are going to get in trouble about knocking that phrase, but people who are just following their bliss, they're they're not they're not actually being fully human. And it's actually sad,
Mhm.
that that's as much as they can comprehend. So the work isn't just handed to us. We need to participate. Um, it's it's a great job to have, being a human being. I think it's a pretty full-time job, luckily. So there's that's kind of all encompassing.
Absolutely. And yeah, I'm not going to hate mail about the bliss comment, but whatever.
I'll
It's all
forward
right.
mine to you. You can do
Yeah.
the same. So
Clayton, this has just been a delight. I'm so happy that you agreed to be on, and um, incorporating your expertise into all of what it means to live well and live healthier and live longer.
well, I'm so glad for the opportunity, and my hope is that your listeners, your regular listeners, will have made it to this point, and will say to themselves, "Huh, well, we're all in this together. It's not the religious people and the not religious people and the spiritual people and the not spiritual people. That we have actually more in common. We have more in common as created beings in this universe than we do uncommon. So hopefully it's a model for, hey, don't, just understand that, um, be engaged, and hopefully that's just the first step on a whole life. So thanks, David.
Thank you so much. It's been a joy having you here.
Thank you. Cheers.
Take care. Bye bye. That was wonderful. Clayton Crawley, very thoughtful guy. If this brings up anything for some people, I know some people have a bit of a resistance and allergy towards religion or religious people. My feeling is look for the good in things, and I think that there's a lot of real good in religion. I think it's pretty easy to find bad if you're looking for it wherever. So I don't know. If you want to continue that discussion, like I said earlier, SuperAge.com, we'll have that discussion. Right now, we're going to have a quick word from our sponsor, and then we're going to get to Just Try This. Today's show is also brought to you by Element, spelled LMNT, my favorite electrolyte mix. One of the great findings that I learned last year was the importance of electrolytes in my water, especially sodium. Of course, if you have hypertension or you're pre-hypertensive, this is something you want to pay attention to. But for most of us, we're probably lacking electrolytes. And my favorite one is Element. And guess what? They just launched grapefruit. So I'm actually drinking a Element grapefruit right now. And that's awesome. If you want to check out Element, go to drinkelement.com, DRINKLMNT.com, and you get a free 8-serving sample pack with any purchase. Check out the grapefruit. It's kind of awesome. This week on Just Try This, I have such an easy one for you guys. It's called standing. And standing as opposed to sitting. And we know that sitting is really not so great for us. It's bad for our hips. It's bad for our back. It's bad for our hamstrings. Makes our feet sort of go to sleep. It's not great. So to whatever extent we can stand, that's a good thing. When I do phone calls now, and I know we don't do phone calls that much anymore. It's all about Zoom. But when we do phone calls, I just stand and I kind of pace around in my office. If I'm doing a long Zoom call, what I'll do is I'll try and prop up the laptop so that I'm standing during the call. I feel more energized. My feet, my back, everything feels better. So this week, on Just Try This. See if you can get in another maybe 20 minutes, half hour, maybe an hour of standing. In fact, if you got a tracker like an Apple Watch, it'll even track it for you. So this week on Just Try This, stand a little more. Thank you for joining us on the show today. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your time. We know it's valuable, and we're very happy that you decided to spend it with us today. If you like the show, please share it with friends, because that's the only way we grow. If you can always leave us a comment. You can leave us a rating wherever you listen to this show. Next week, we got another good one. You're going to really like what we got coming next week. Until then, everyone, have a wonderful week, and see if you can get a little more standing into your days. Take care now. Bye now.